My family didn't invite me on the family trip after I was the family's personal chef for 15 years. I should have stopped years ago. 15 damn years. That's how long I let myself be used. Every Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day, you name it. My house, my food, my money, my time. And for what? To be excluded from a family trip while they still expected me to roll out a 5-star meal for them when they got back. Yeah, that was the moment I snapped. I never planned to be the family's designated holiday host. It just happened. In my early 20s, I landed a solid job, saved up, and bought a house before the market went to hell. 3 bedrooms, nice backyard, open floor plan. Nothing crazy, but compared to my siblings' shoebox apartments, it was a damn mansion. My parents had moved out of state years ago, settling in Florida to enjoy the sun. Meanwhile, my siblings, Derek and Michelle, were stuck in renter's purgatory. Derek had a tiny downtown studio that barely fit his gaming setup, and Michelle bounced from one crappy roommate situation to another because no one respects my space. So, the first year, I offered to host Thanksgiving. It felt good, like I was doing something grown-up. I cooked the turkey, set the table, decorated. My parents flew in and praised me. My siblings showed up, ate my food, and left a mess. It should have been a one-time thing. It wasn't. Year after year, the expectations grew. What started as a simple turkey dinner turned into a full-blown catering event. Suddenly, I wasn't just making turkey. I was brining it, stuffing it, seasoning it to perfection. The side dishes multiplied. 5 vegetable options. 3 types of bread, dessert spreads that could put a bakery out of business. And the help? Non-existent. Derek brought a 6-pack of cheap beer, then drank 5 of them himself. Michelle showed up late with a Pinterest fail appetizer and called it homemade. Mom offered helpful advice while sipping wine, like, "Oh honey, your stuffing is a little dry this year." Dad supervised from the couch. And the cleanup? All me. I should have seen the warning signs. The way my family treated me like their personal hotel and restaurant. But back then, I just kept saying yes. Big mistake. One Thanksgiving, I got sick. Not just a cold, full-blown flu. 101-degree fever, chills, nausea, the works. Did my family step up? Nope. Mom's solution? Just keep it simple this year, honey. Maybe only make 6 dishes instead of 10. 6. Not 1. Not 2. 6. So there I was, sweating through my shirt, taking Dayquil like shots, while a 20-pound turkey roasted in my oven. And when my family arrived, they complained. "Wait, where's the sweet potato casserole? You always make it. Why does the gravy taste different? Damn, you look terrible, man. You should really take care of yourself." I should have quit that day, but I didn't. Because every year, the guilt trip came. "We're counting on you. It's tradition. You know we can't do it without you." And like an idiot, I kept saying yes. 15 years. 15 holidays wasted. And then I found out. I was at Costco, picking up Thanksgiving supplies, paper towels, disposable roasting pans, whiskey for survival. That's when I ran into my cousin Jake. "Yo, you excited for Florida?" he asked. I frowned. "What Florida?" His face froze. "Wait, you don't know?" Turns out, my entire family was going to Florida for Uncle Richard's 65th birthday. A big, fancy weekend getaway at a resort. My parents, Derek, Michelle, their partners, everyone. Everyone except me. "Oh man, I thought for sure they told you." Jake mumbled, suddenly real interested in the ground. They didn't. They planned a family trip, left me out, and still expected me to host Thanksgiving when they got back. I felt something inside me snap. I could have called them out right then. I could have texted, "Hey, so I heard about Florida. Thanks for the invite, assholes." But instead, I played dumb. When my dad texted, "Thanksgiving at your place as usual?" I replied, "Of course. Can't wait to see everyone." I let them enjoy their little secret trip, thinking I was none the wiser. Meanwhile, I started making my own plans. Instead of cooking for those ungrateful leeches, I booked a cabin in the mountains, with a few close friends. For bedrooms, hot tub, fire pit, complete isolation. No family. No stress. No bullshit. For the first time in 15 years, I was taking a real holiday. 7 a.m. I loaded up my car and hit the road. 10 a.m. Stopped for breakfast. Ate without having to cook at first. 12 p.m. Arrived at the cabin. Opened a beer. Watched football. Enjoyed freedom. Meanwhile, at my house, chaos. 3 p.m. My family arrived. To a locked house. 3:15 p.m. My phone started blowing up. Hey, we're outside. You home? Daniel, where the hell are you? Are you seriously pulling this right now? By 4 p.m., the messages turned angry. What the hell, man? Thanksgiving is ruined. Mom's crying. You better explain yourself. At 5 p.m., I got the final call. Dad. Furious. I don't know what kind of stunt you're pulling, but this is unacceptable. Your mother is in tears. Call us back. Now. I laughed. Took another sip of my drink. Turned off my phone. Let them figure it out. I woke up late the next morning. No alarm. No frantic rush to start prepping food. No guilt weighing me down. Just me, sprawled out in a warm cabin bed, with the smell of fresh coffee drifting in from the kitchen. Instead of spending Thanksgiving exhausted and stressed, I spent it relaxing. Hot tub in the morning. A few beers by the fire. A meal cooked by someone else for once. Meanwhile, back home, my family was unraveling. When I finally turned my phone back on, the notifications flooded in. Mobile phone with arrow 27 missed calls. Envelope with arrow 43 texts. Email 6 voicemails. I skimmed through them, piecing together the timeline of their breakdown. 3:15 p.m., the initial confusion. Hey, we're outside. Are you home? Daniel, we're all waiting. Did you forget it's Thanksgiving? 3:45 p.m., the first signs of panic. We've been standing here for half an hour. What's going on? Are you okay? Call us back now. 4 p.m., the mood shifts. This isn't funny, dude. Open the damn door. Mom's freaking out. What the hell, man? 4:30 p.m., full-blown meltdown. We are calling the police if you don't respond in 30 minutes. Mom is crying. You ruined Thanksgiving. Are you happy now? 5:15 p.m., the final blow. Dad left a voicemail. His voice was cold. I don't know what kind of stunt you're pulling, but this is unacceptable. Your mother is in tears. Your sister is livid. You better have a damn good explanation for this. I sat there, phone in hand, sipping my coffee, feeling nothing but satisfaction. Meanwhile, at my house, from the texts, I could tell exactly what happened. They stood outside for over an hour, expecting me to come running. When that didn't happen, they argued over what to do. Eventually, they drove to a nearby restaurant, but since it was Thanksgiving, everywhere was packed. Lisa's boyfriend's family offered to take them in, but by that point, they were too embarrassed to accept. They ended up ordering takeout and eating Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' tiny apartment, stuffing their faces with lukewarm Chinese food out of styrofoam containers. I imagined the scene. Jason sulking over his cold General Tso's chicken, Lisa pouting because there was no Instagram-worthy turkey to post, my parents glaring at each other, silently blaming me for their complete lack of a backup plan. Perfect. The morning after, my mother sent the final message. Envelope with arrow, Mom. Your behavior is completely unacceptable. We all had to scramble to find food last night. Your father says you are not welcome at Christmas or any future family gathering until you apologize. I laughed out loud. They had excluded me from a family vacation, expected me to feed them like a servant, and now I was the one who needed to apologize? I took my time typing my response. Envelope with arrow me. Wow. Must have been tough looking out for me like this, making sure I wasn't burdened with a family trip, while keeping me free to cook and clean for you all. So thoughtful. Envelope with arrow me. Continued. Good news. I'm officially retiring as the family chef, maid, and event planner. If an apology is needed, I think we all know who should be giving it. But don't worry, I won't hold my breath. I hit send. And just like that, I was done. They weren't giving up that easily. Day 1 silence. Eerie, unnatural silence. I could practically hear their brains scrambling, trying to process what had just happened. Then the messages started up again. Envelope with arrow, Dad. Son, let's be reasonable. You can't just abandon your family over a misunderstanding. Envelope with arrow, Mom. Please, let's talk. You hurt me deeply with what you did. Envelope with arrow, Jason. Dude, WTF. Just say sorry and move on. Mom and Dad are wrecked. Envelope with arrow, Lisa. I literally don't understand what your problem is. We didn't invite you to Florida because we thought you were too busy, and now you're punishing us? Grow up. I read them all. Ignored them all. Not a single one of them acknowledged the real issue, that they had excluded me, that they had taken me for granted, that they had expected me to serve them without hesitation, while giving me nothing in return. On Monday night, my dad called. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I answered. Son, he said, voice deep, controlled. The I'm the head of the household tone. We need to talk. I let the silence stretch. What you did to your mother was cruel. She was devastated. I exhaled. You mean how you all conveniently forgot to invite me to a family vacation, then expected me to cook and clean for you afterward? You're blowing this out of proportion. No, Dad. I finally see things for what they are. You're overreacting. I'm setting boundaries. You're acting childish. I'm acting like a man who's tired of being used. There was a long silence. Then his voice dropped. If you don't apologize, don't expect to be part of this family anymore. And just like that, it was clear. This wasn't about family. It never had been. It was about control. They didn't want a brother. They didn't want a son. They wanted a servant who smiled while being used. So I made my choice. Then I guess I'm not part of this family anymore. Click. I blocked their numbers. Left the family group chat. Booked another trip for Christmas. I didn't look back. And for the first time in 15 years, I felt free. It had been a full week since I had walked away, since I had ignored every message, every call, every desperate, manipulative attempt to pull me back into the role of holiday butler, family event planner, unpaid caterer, and full-time doormat. And yet, despite my firm and final declaration that I was done, despite my unwavering silence, despite my complete refusal to acknowledge their carefully orchestrated guilt trips, I knew, with absolute certainty, that they weren't done with me just yet, because people like my family, people who have built their entire existence around the convenience of having someone else shoulder the weight of responsibility, people who are so accustomed to getting what they want without lifting a single damn finger, don't just accept change. No, they fight it. They fight it with guilt. They fight it with anger. They fight it with every manipulative trick they can muster. And when all else fails, they tear themselves apart. At first, the silence was deceptive, a carefully crafted illusion, an artificial calm before the inevitable storm, a period where they weren't reaching out, weren't flooding my phone with texts, weren't leaving passive-aggressive voicemails disguised as concern, and yet, I could feel their resentment brewing, simmering beneath the surface, festering like an untreated wound, growing more bitter, more hostile, more desperate by the day. I knew they were talking, knew they were plotting, knew that somewhere, in a dimly lit living room or a back corner of a coffee shop, they were huddled together, their voices hushed but sharp, dissecting my behavior like a forensic investigation, desperately trying to answer the one question they couldn't seem to wrap their self-absorbed heads around. How the hell did we lose control over him? Because that's what this was to them, control. Not love, not family, not mutual respect, control. And now that their puppet had cut the strings, they had no idea what to do. When direct contact failed, when my refusal to engage made their usual tactics useless, they did what people like them always do when faced with an obstacle they can't manipulate into submission. They turned to outsiders. It started small, almost laughably predictable. A few random acquaintances, people I barely spoke to, suddenly reaching out, casually dropping messages like, "Hey man, your mom mentioned you guys had some kind of falling out. Hope everything's okay." Or, "Dude, ran into your sister the other day. She seemed pretty upset about Thanksgiving. You should really talk to her. Family's important, you know." Each time, I responded with nothing. Each time, I let their carefully placed baits sink into oblivion. But then they escalated. Because when strangers didn't work, when I refused to acknowledge the whispers and backchannel attempts, they aimed higher. They went after Uncle Richard. It was late, past 11, the kind of hour where calls only come from emergencies or bad decisions, and when my phone buzzed and I saw his name flash across the screen, I hesitated, because Uncle Richard wasn't like them. He wasn't part of the toxic, entitled circus that had defined my immediate family. He was one of the few relatives I actually respected, a no bullshit, tell it like it is kind of guy who had spent 20 years in the military, survived deployments in places most people only heard about on the news, and built a life that didn't revolve around manipulating others into doing his work for him, which meant if he was calling me, it wasn't for drama. So, against my better judgment, I answered. "Kid," he said, voice low, steady, neutral, but I could hear the weight behind it, the careful calculation of a man trying to approach a minefield without setting off an explosion. "I'm not going to beat around the bush. Your parents are pissed. Your sister's pissed. Hell, even Jason's pissed. And I don't think I've ever seen that guy put real effort into an emotion before." I exhaled through my nose, leaning back in my chair, staring at the ceiling like it held the answers to why people refuse to take accountability for their own damn actions. "Let me guess," I said, voice even controlled. "They called you to talk some sense into me?" Richard chuckled, a short, dry sound. "Something like that. They're convinced you've lost your mind. Think you're throwing away your family over one little misunderstanding. That's a funny way to describe deliberately excluding me from a family trip while still expecting me to cook them dinner like nothing happened." "Yeah," Richard sighed. "I figured there was more to it." And that's what I respected about the man. He listened. He didn't just assume. He didn't take one side and run with it like a self-righteous idiot. He gathered the facts, pieced things together, and formed his own conclusions, instead of swallowing whatever half-baked sob story was thrown at him. "They treating you like the villain?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Kid," he said, "they're acting like you committed a damn war crime." I laughed, actually laughed, because of course they were. Of course they were turning this into some grand betrayal, some act of unforgivable cruelty, instead of what it really was. Me finally standing up for myself after 15 years of being treated like a holiday workhorse. "So," Richard said, voice shifting slightly, still calm but now edged with curiosity, "are you done with them for good? Or just teaching them a lesson?" I let the question sit in the air for a moment, rolling it around in my head, tasting it, examining it from every angle, and realizing, for the first time, that I didn't know the answer. Was this a permanent severance? A final break from people who had never valued me beyond what I could provide? Or was this a lesson, a long overdue wake-up call, a test to see if they were capable of change? I sighed. Guess we'll find out. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to bed without feeling like I owed anyone a damn thing. No guilt, no stress, no obligation, just freedom. And whether my family learned from this or not, that was their problem now. I woke up the next morning with an odd feeling in my chest. Not regret, not guilt, not even anger, just an overwhelming sense of clarity. Like I had finally stepped outside of a fog I hadn't realized I'd been living in for years. No stress about upcoming holidays. No mental checklist of dishes I had to prepare. No creeping anxiety about who would bring what and how they'd inevitably screw it up. For the first time in 15 years, I was free. But freedom, as I was quickly about to learn, is something that terrifies people who thrive on control. It had been exactly 10 days since Thanksgiving. 10 days since I had ignored their frantic calls, their angry messages, their guilt-tripping voicemails, their sad little attempts to manipulate me through mutual acquaintances. 10 days since I had answered Uncle Richard's call, since he had confirmed what I already knew, that my family wasn't mourning my absence. They were raging at their loss of control. And in those 10 days, something had shifted. The messages had slowed down. The calls had become less frequent. Even the passive-aggressive Facebook posts had stopped. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, they had gotten the message, that they had finally realized I was done playing their game, that they were accepting their loss and moving on. I should have known better, because when manipulators fail to pull you back in with guilt, they go for the nuclear option. They try to ruin your name. It started with a random text from an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Envelope with arrow Ryan. Hey man, random question. What's going on with your family? Your sister posted something about losing faith in people and being betrayed by those we love most. I stared at the message for a second, feeling that familiar pulse of irritation surge through me. Of course, they weren't getting the response they wanted privately. So now they were turning to public spectacle. I opened Facebook, something I usually avoided unless I was really bored, and there it was, right at the top of my feed. Lisa's status update. Sometimes, the people you do anything for turn out to be the ones who never really cared at all. Family is supposed to mean something, but I guess that's not true for everyone. The comments were exactly what I expected. Stay strong, girl. Some people don't know what they've got until it's gone. Fake people always reveal themselves in the end. Whoever hurt you doesn't deserve you. The best part? She never mentioned my name, because that's how cowards operate. They don't directly confront you. They don't own up to their part in the problem. They just plant the seed of a story where they are the victim and hope people fill in the blanks. I checked Jason's page next. Another post. Jason's status update. Loyalty goes both ways. If you expect people to always be there for you, maybe don't turn your back on them first. Oh, for F***'s sake, ***. They were really going for it. And the best part? They weren't even talking to me anymore. This wasn't about fixing anything. This was about revenge. I had two options. One, ignore it. Let them scream into the void. Let them twist the story however they wanted. Two, burn the entire narrative to the ground. I chose option 2. I took a deep breath, cracked my knuckles, and wrote my own post. My status update. It's funny how some people think family means one person does all the work while everyone else benefits. It's also funny how they conveniently forget the years of effort, money, and energy that one person put in when he finally decides he's tired of being used. If you're mad that I finally said no, that's on you. But let's not rewrite history and pretend you ever cared about family until it stopped serving you. I hit post. And then, just for good measure, I tagged Lisa and Jason directly and logged out. Let them deal with that. It didn't take long. When I checked my phone a few hours later, I had 5 missed calls from Lisa, 2 from Jason, and surprise, a voicemail from my mother. I played it on speaker while making myself a drink. Daniel, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this public attack on your family is completely uncalled for. You've hurt so many people with your selfishness. We were trying to keep this private, but clearly, you just want to make a scene. I hope you're happy. Call me when you're ready to act like an adult. I smiled to myself, taking a sip of my whiskey, because, for the first time in 15 years, I was. It had been 3 weeks since Thanksgiving. 3 weeks since I cut them off. 3 weeks since I stopped being their holiday workhorse. 3 weeks since I watched them implode under their own entitlement like a house of cards collapsing in slow motion. And now they were desperate. They had tried guilt. They had tried anger. They had tried playing the victims online. And when all of that failed to break me, they did what all manipulators do when they lose their grip. They escalated. They showed up at my house. It was a Saturday afternoon, a rare day where I had 0 responsibilities, 0 stress, 0 obligations, and was actually enjoying the simple pleasure of being left the hell alone. I had just settled into my couch, a fresh beer in one hand, remote in the other, when, bang, bang, bang. The kind of knock that wasn't just a polite tap. The kind of knock that meant trouble. I sighed, setting my drink down. I already knew who it was. I swung the door open, and there they were, standing on my porch like a delegation of the United Nations, except instead of trying to solve world peace, they were here to force me back into my place. Mom, Dad, Lisa, Jason, the full circus. They looked pissed. Mom's arms were crossed, her signature, "I'm so disappointed in you," expression in full effect. Dad stood behind her, silent but visibly seething. Lisa looked ready for war, phone clutched in her hand like she was about to live-stream this family intervention. Jason, predictably, just looked annoyed, probably mad that he had been dragged into effort. I didn't say a word, just leaned against the doorframe, watching them, waiting. Mom was the first to speak. Daniel, we need to talk. I raised an eyebrow. Do we? Lisa scoffed. Oh my God, stop acting like a victim. We came here to fix this. Fix what? I asked, my voice calm, almost bored. You mean fix the fact that I finally said no? That I finally decided to stop being your free labor? Jason groaned. Dude, you're being ridiculous. Am I? I tilted my head, giving him a slow, deliberate look. Because from where I'm standing, you all seem to be the ones having a crisis. Mom exhaled sharply, clearly losing patience. Daniel, enough with the attitude. This is about family. You can't just walk away from us like this. I let out a short, humorless laugh. You mean like how you all walked away from me when you planned a family vacation and conveniently forgot to invite me, but still expected me to cook you a Thanksgiving feast like nothing happened? Silence. Lisa shifted uncomfortably. Mom's eyes darted away. Dad cleared his throat. Look, mistakes were made. I cut him off. No. Choices were made. He blinked. You didn't forget to invite me. You just didn't think I mattered enough to include. You didn't forget that I existed. You just remembered that I was useful. And that's the only reason we're having this conversation right now. Because now that I'm gone, suddenly, everything's falling apart. Lisa scoffed, rolling her eyes like this was all just so dramatic. Jesus, Daniel, you're making this into some huge betrayal. We didn't invite you because we figured you were too busy. You always say how much work the holidays are for you. So we thought we were doing you a favor. I let that sit in the air for a second. Then I smiled. Oh, okay. So you excluded me as an act of kindness. Lisa faltered for half a second, then quickly covered it up with another dramatic eye roll. Oh, whatever. You know what I mean. No, Lisa, I really don't. Because if you were doing me such a huge favor, why didn't you tell me about it? Why did I have to hear about it from someone else? Why did you all keep it a secret until you needed me to cook for you? Silence. Mom shifted uncomfortably. Jason looked at his phone like he wanted to be anywhere but here. Finally, Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. All right, maybe we didn't handle it the right way. But we're here now, aren't we? Trying to make things right. I exhaled slowly. Let's get one thing straight. I stepped forward, looking at each of them in turn, locking eyes, making sure they heard every single word. You're not here because you care about making things right. You're here because I finally stopped playing my role. You don't miss me. You miss what I did for you. You miss the free food, the cleaned-up kitchen, the convenience. That's what this is really about. Lisa scoffed again. God, you're so full of yourself. You think the world revolves around you? Newsflash, none of us need you. I smirked. Really? Then why are you all standing on my porch? Lisa opened her mouth, furious, but Mom stopped her with a sharp look. Fine, Mom said, voice low and measured, like she was conceding a battle she knew she couldn't win. If that's really how you feel, then I guess we'll stop trying. Dad nodded, jaw tight. Jason just shrugged, like he couldn't care less. Lisa, still fuming, muttered something under her breath. And just like that, the show was over. No apology. No real acknowledgement of what they did. Just one final guilt trip. One last attempt to make me feel like I was the bad guy. It didn't work. All right, I said simply, stepping back inside. Good talk. And then, without another word, I shut the door in their faces. It's been 2 months since that day. 2 months since I finally cut the cord. 2 months since I stopped being their holiday servant. 2 months since I reclaimed my peace. And you know what? They haven't called since. Not once. Because in the end, I was right. They never wanted a son or a brother. They wanted a convenience. And when that was gone, so was their interest in me. And that's fine. Because for the first time in 15 years, my holidays are mine. And I've never been happier.